Hi, Shannon. Thank you for being a part of the Unstoppable Together mini series. The future is accessible. We are excited to hear your perspectives on leadership and advocacy and the future of disability justice. I am Taylor Lee, Colorado Cross Disability Coalition's leadership and advocacy intern. Shannon, would you mind please introducing yourself?
Yes, hello. My name is Shannon Callahan. I use he, him pronouns. I'm male. I have a purple shirt on, a polo, balded, beard. I work for a company called Convo Communications. And what I do there is I do the workforce system. And I focus a lot on a lot of operations work is what I do at Convo. I've been here for 25 years. I've had several organizations like CCDC, where we've been involved with various of their committees, involved in deaf associations, a lot. I've done several things. I was recently involved with the Rights of People with Disabilities Task Force. That was a committee that we set up, and I don't know what else I should cover.
Wow, that's quite a lot. Very impressive. And we are now wanting to have people imagine the future. And so we want to know um, what you think. What is one thing that you'd like to see happen in the next 5 years, and how do we get there together?
Yes, thank you for asking. Really, the first thing before I continue, not needing to ask for accommodations. That's number one. I want to just be able to show up to a place and belong there, have full access, have full accommodations, where I don't have to be like, hey, do you mind? Like that kind of gives up my like rights, to like my own responsibilities. I have to like ask. It should just be ready there for me. And I think that's a place to start. And keeping that in mind, it's not just a physical thing, but it can be a digital thing too. We could have, universal citizen systems, different levels of consideration, uh, where, we could just make spaces accessible for the future. Kind of like in Star Trek. And then to get there, we really need to start with education. This the ability for us, for people in the audience to be able to recognize, okay, it is okay to be different and to understand those differences. We're not all going to have the same accommodation. That's not possible. But today's audience, me as an audience, like, what, it's not about what's in it for me. I'm trying to figure out, it is a complex system altogether. We can't just look at it at at the individual. So we do need to start with education, and we need to make a place where everybody is welcome. And that's a great place to start for people to be more open-minded and start considering others. Often we're involved in committees, groups, or agencies, and it looks like, okay, where's my benefit? But like where is the other missing? Where can we help? Where can we meet on equal grounds? Not necessarily, me coming to meet on equal grounds, but for all of us to be on an equal playing field. Like, and for them to think, oh, you thought of me when we got to the space, and not having to, we're trying to figure out how to view things from the same place, not view things from like my perspective. And then also considering, unfortunately in today's politics, they're pretty frozen in their perspectives. And again, with the education system, it doesn't just stop there. There's pairs. There's a lot of in-depth things that we can go, and I can have a full day on that. But when we're talking about being open-minded in education, we need to be able to really focus in on that. A lot of people, they get into their day-to-day work and then they just get really exhausted. They feel like they're alone. They should be, able to be supported and think like, okay, there are some places to grow where there's like good innovation, then that should be normal. And then that should be like a new normal for us. And that's kind of how, we sh would be able to get to that goal.
Wonderful. Yeah, great answer. And who you might have already answered this, but who do you think needs to be brought to the table in order to have these conversations?
Yeah, thank you. I could back up a little bit. Um, when you'd mentioned the kind of like a 5-year projection,
Mhm.
um, it's not just about naming specific people, but about like who's going to come, being able to focus on the workforce. Often we're trying to catch up to someone who's already in that position, like in a position, but that's not perfect in itself, but we accept it because it's as high as best as we've gotten. And then personally, in my personal experience and biases, often when people with disabilities get into um, when they get into some of these positions, they kind of get cut from the community because they're kind of taking up all the opportunities as a worker. They're like in that company or an organization. And that's not what it's about. It should be able to be like, okay, I'm working to get into a position like in government, for example, showing that I can shows that they can as well, that we can do that. And it's not just looking at the, you know, one person who got in. It's also talking about the other employees who never thought like, oh, you got hired. Like this kind of group of people got hired. Really? Like, they're capable, they're able, we're all on equal playing field, all these things. And there's a big breakdown with biases and discrimination, we should, and that's not what should be important. It should be, you know, what kind of like natural conversations are we having every day, like just over coffee, whether it be politics, what happened yesterday, you know, we should be focusing on like what makes us unique. Like, oh, for example, like a blind person, you're like, oh, did you know these things? Or like, oh no, I never knew or considered that. Or, kind of introduce them to something and make it normal. And often biases get in the way of that. So I guess now to answer your question, who should be in that process? From my perspective, um, like we should start with like business startup companies. And the reason I think that is often we're trying to figure out what the problem is and what solutions we can offer, but we forget about the kind of solutions that we can. There's a good opportunity to see about the different like lengths and perspectives, or sorry, viewing things from a different lens. Um, like as a deaf person, I could answer, for example, I'm having an argument um about drones. Um, I don't need the headphones for that. I just need to be able to see if the drone is going. I'm like, oh, why, can't you have why don't you need that part? People don't think about it. They think that like, oh, because it has a headphone and headset case, it's only for hearing people. Or maybe there's, people who maybe like there's amputees who might not get invited to some of these like opportunities as well. There's a lot of these kinds of biases like that we tend to overlook. And then the a little bit behind. Sorry, this is fully the interpreter just clarifying to make sure I'm on I'm on point. Uh, I just lost my thought. What's the last sentence? Business startups tend to take more risks and they'll think, oh, it's okay for me to try this, but what if I, had an employee and often people don't realize that people with disabilities are very high skilled and really talented workers. And people often, you hire them, they'll be like, oh my gosh, wow, they are such a hard worker. I'm like, yes, of course. We always have been hard workers, but it's the system who hasn't shown that. And I feel like, for business startups, they often have those considerations, but then, you put someone in that, provides like a resource to make them more successful. And I do feel like that, that's the people to bring to the table, the people who have the know-how.
Hmm. And speaking of the future, what do you think an accessible future looks like for you?
The interpreters are going to switch real quick. If you see the other one has come camera on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you mind repeating the question?
Of course, yeah. We're speaking about the future, and I'm wondering what does accessibility look like in the future?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's tough. That's tough because the reason why right now everything that's happening and just everything's so in motion and pretty chaotic at this point. But I do really believe that we are ready to make changes. And I feel like if we want, as historically what has been happening all this time, we've kind of ridden on the back of the ADA. And that's where, okay, wow, like we're grasping, finally, we have that opportunity. People are thinking, oh, there was oppression and there were stigmas. And that stigma has stuck and continued to people for what, 35 years now? So we are recognizing now AI and the community at large and the internet with all those, and really the digital community, people getting more educated. Very often we have this new post ADA situation, and some have just never experienced oppression as to what it was before. They haven't experienced the oppression that we've had for years. So pretty often people are like, "Oh, not a big deal," and this kind of sure, we'll shrug your shoulders, no big deal. Um, they don't realize what we've had to experience, rolling with the punches, dealing with discrimination, getting through all those scenarios. So, but now in the future, I feel like what that's going to look like. Indeed, I believe that we can ascend. We can truly ascend. Just for example, we have we call it architectural, it's the deaf space. It's just a term that we use. It's just give you a quick example of what that is. People sometimes wonder, what is that? But the architectural design is designed by deaf people for deaf people. That's why it's the architectural design. It's a visual, it's navigating, it's lights, it's coloring, it's distance, all this, just the gamut that you can possibly imagine that we would include in design for ourselves. And that's when we started to think, wow, okay. So just for example, if there's an office corner, sometimes you can't see someone because you're passing that corner and then you run into them, you bump into them. Well, why? Why not have some kind of visual that you're going around a corridor or elevators, have that be a little bit more fully open, see where people are. So just those different kind of ideas that we can start to include, just for example, business accounting too. Sometimes they use with the accountant too. They have, there is a company who savants, uses savants. Um, and it's like they already have them there, they're usable, and we think, oh, that would be a great idea. Just for example, they have no idea, why not, why not, all this is here. So with that being said, the future and how we can visualize it, it definitely can be more already designed for us, already just designed.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, versus us chasing it all the time. It's designed for us right there. Make sure that we have it. concretely. And I just, our whole enjoyment and just life would be different.
Yeah. Now let's talk about voice and leadership. Why is it important that people with disabilities lead the way in creating accessible communities and policies?
Well, that's a really great question. Um, Really, if you think about it, with just a really quick, very, very quick example, you know, someday, sorry, MJ, the majority. The majority of men typically consider there are, feminism issues. Like I know everything, and no, that's not true. It's like the masculine and feminine pushback. To make important decisions, people will say, "Hey, do you know this already? Do you agree with this?" And some people will say, "No, I don't know." Oh, well, that's because you're a woman. And so, proportionately, just that kind of concept, putting that in with people who are disabilities, they know better of what's good for themselves. They have the eyes, they have the true world perspective of the system that they live in. And when that's really, and through their lens, they have a very special lens and it's very unique. They see everything as it truly is from the lens they're coming from. Like you might consider what's this barrier? How to get around it? We've thought it through. How to take that barrier down? How to remove it? What's the solution? What's their orientation to the whole problem? And then what we'd say normal people haven't experienced yet. It would take them a lot of time to even figure out why. So that's why what's best for us, we need to lead through it because we've already seen it, we've experienced it, every roadblock, everything, we've lived through. And then basically all as a group, each of these people, like whether it doesn't matter, female, male, what race you are, what grade you are, your knowledge, your intelligence level, maybe your location, where you were born and raised. Again, I could talk on and on and on. We could leave that for another day, but we definitely have the lens to do the leading.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well put. And what would you say to someone who maybe just um, is starting to claim their voice in this movement?
My very first answer for them would be celebrate. And the reason why, very often when people, for a long, long time, they just didn't have that kind of spirit. It was always like a wayward vibe. Am I really involved? Am I really not? Do I have my foot in the door? Where do I find my place? And that's where you feel like, okay, finally, I belong. I am being seen. So, with that being said, celebrate, of course, celebrate. Let's start with that because, and I can give you a true experience. We have a film that came out that's called Deaf President Now. The film is made by. It's so ironic that it was actually by a classmate of mine. Ironically, one of my classmates made this film, and the movie it had never really impacted me before. Normally, um, the term we have is small d deaf or big D deaf. So a small D deaf person maybe is not too much into the culture, or they're here or there, whereas a big D deaf is strongly into the culture. When I watch this film, I'm like, wow. I should be proud to be Big D. That's what we call Big D deaf. And the reason why it showed the system had been oppressive for so long. When it finally the oppression was taken off and lifted off, it was like this aha revelation. We do have a voice. We do know what is better for ourselves. So when people finally listened, when they finally recognized us, it was a major aha, and that was part of the community where they can voice and have a voice. So even though a deaf person doesn't actually voice very well, or normally we use our voice. But to that, so with that being said, this was a major understanding, and this film just happened. So I'm like, for you to be asking me this question right now is when I am at this point of celebrate. Um,
That's beautiful.
and
Thank
not even,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, beautiful, beautiful with both hands, beautiful with all hands. Yes, because after that, we can finally have a place where we can discuss. Now we can have this discussion place, and then okay, how do you apply this to that problem? And then get an aha, I'm not alone. Like this big, yes, I can finally have a discussion with other humans that before I did not. So we can have this camaraderie and see how we can improve that. I can break down those barriers. We can together. So that's when we can start to grow the community and blossom a family. So we want to let's talk about everything. So that's what's beautiful too. So.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your voice and your experiences with us. Shannon, you truly embody what it means to be unstoppable. And you can follow more about Shannon and other incredible advocates um, by following the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition on social media platforms. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, um, on Blue Sky and YouTube, and we are at CCDC Online across the board. Um, let's see. Um, and you can also follow us, check us out at www.ccdconline.org. And remember, uh, together we are unstoppable.